finally finished after months. Actually, it might have been even a year since I read the first book. Red Seas Under Red Skies, the second of the Gentleman Bastards by Scott Lynch. I forgot my notes elsewhere for this one. I did write extensive notes, but basically the first half of the novel is we meet up with John and Locke again. I always want to say John Locke. They are 2 years into their next big scheme. This time they're robbing a casino. There's this tower where all the wealthy go and spend their money and gamble, and also all the wealthy in the city keep their goods in the vault of this casino. So they're 2 years into working this scheme, and they say that the games can't be rigged, but the people can. So they're using their people skills and people's weaknesses against them to sort of work their way up this tower. Literally, each floor is like more prestigious than the last, with the goal in mind to eventually, we think, rob this vault. And the first of this book is much like the first of the last book, where chronologically we're doing a lot of backward and forwarding. We start 2 years in the future, 2 years into the scheme, and we're constantly going back and seeing how they got from the end of the last book to this book, which isn't really important, but I like that chronological jumping back and forth, which we did see in the first book. So that's the big setup, and I'm like, okay, it's a big, even though looking at the book and it talks about, it like seems very piratey, but we'll get to that. So about halfway through the book, so they're working for this guy, or they're trying to rob this guy Requin, the guy who runs the Sin Spire, the big casino, and part of their plan involves these chairs. Locke has these specially made chairs, gives them to the guy, and it's like, what are these chairs for? And he says to the guy, like, look, I'm here to rob your vault. That's what I'm here to do. I've been cheating this whole time, but I'm actually here to rob your vault. And the guy's like, why are you telling me this? Now I have to kill you. And he's like, no, I'm telling you because I'll betray my employer in order to get a job with you, because I want to work for your casino. And the guy's like, oh, okay, sure. I guess that seems legit. So this is the scheme. Of course, the whole time you're thinking, well, Locke and John are still, this is part of their scheme. Like, Locke's putting on this false face to trick him somehow. But interestingly, he's like, oh, the other guy I've been gambling with, this John, not John, he has another name. He's like, yeah, I want to kill him. Yeah, no, we're like desperate enemies, and I can't stand the guy, and that's part of this plan. Is I'll betray my employer, his fake employer that doesn't exist, to you, if you let me kill John. Which I don't, after reading this whole book, I don't know why that needed to be a thing. Anyways, again, I'm missing my notes. So we're like, okay, so this is the next level in his scheme to rob this guy. But I just think this is a bit crooked. That might have made it worse. But then the Archon of the city, this sort of would-be warlord, military dictator who doesn't really have as much power as he'd like. The city's run in opposition to this military leader and the council of merchants and money people. And then the head of the Sin Spire is sort of the head of the sort of underground gangs and the criminal underworld and whatnot. Anyway, so this Archon guy captures Jean and Locke, and he's like, hey, remember those Bonds Magi from the last book that you didn't kill? Because if you kill them, then they will kill you. You just violently maimed him and mutilated him. And you thought, ho, I didn't actually kill him, so we're scot-free. You're not scot-free. They've contacted me, and they want me to punish you. So these Bonds Magi have given John and Locke's real names to the Archon, and so the Archon poisons them without them knowing, and then withholds the antidote. And he says, every few months I'll give you the antidote. You need to keep taking it in order to live. So basically they have to do whatever the Archon tells them to. And the Archon says, all right, what I need you to do is go out, pretend you're a pirate, get a whole bunch of pirates together and attack the city, because then the council will give me more power to go and fight the pirates, and then I'll become more powerful. So that's this guy's scheme, kind of straightforward. And John and Locke have no choice but to accept, even though they're 2 years into this Sunspire scheme. So there's a lot of backward and forward between the Sunspire and the Archon and the pirates, and they're learning how to be pirates. And eventually, this is like halfway through the book, they go out and steal a ship, steal a crew from the prison, and escape out into the great blue sea. And their plan is to pretend that they're pirates and stir up this pirate uprising. But their crew quickly finds out that they're not actually pirates. They're just a bunch of landlubbers. And the person who was with them, who was an actual sailor and who was supposed to help them, ends up dying of a heart attack. And then there's a big storm and everything goes wrong. And so the crew mutinies and throws John and Locke overboard into a tiny little boat. But conveniently, an actual giant pirate ship shows up and scoops them up and captures their crew and their ship. And then we have sort of a sequence of them starting out as basically prisoners of this pirate ship and working their way up. And because John and Locke are so great, they manage to work their way up very high. And they go back to the pirate haven, and then Locke admits to the pirate captain, hey, this is why we're here. This is our plan. The Archon wants you guys to rise up against him. But if we can follow along with the plan, because we need to get back to the city to get our antidote, then we'll kill the Archon for you and deal with him once and for all. And if you don't take this offer, then the Archon's going to find some other way to try and screw with you. And like, we're your inside men. You need to team up with us. And because the captain's like pretty smart and sees that John and Locke are pretty smart and they've helped them out, they agree to go along with this plan. Side note: the first mate of the ship, the lieutenant, I guess she's called, or lieutenant, falls in love with John. John and her, Esri, her name is, get along really well. So the pirate captain goes to all the other captains at the pirate place and is like, hey, I'm gonna go off and do some raiding to try and stir up the Archon, but I'm actually just doing it so I can send these guys off to kill the Archon. Do I have your permission to sort of stick my hand in this hornet's nest? And all the pirate captains are like, yeah, no, it sounds good. You're the only one risking yourself, sort of thing. Go off and do it. So she goes off and does it. And then a couple of the other pirate captains are like, wait, we don't want our way of life to be changed. And what if she actually kicks up a huge hornet's nest and we all get killed? So one of the pirates then later goes out to chase her down, even though at this point the delay is so long that she would have already been raiding and had already stirred this up. So him going out to try and hunt her down and stop her is stupid and pointless. So John and Locke get back to the Archon. There's a lot of backward and forwarding until eventually they do a lot of raiding and stuff, and they're getting more of the antidote. They're trying to sort of, how can this plan come together? And that's when this other ship shows up from the pirate haven and is like, no, I'm going to fight you and kill you and stop you, other pirate ship. So then there's a big pirate battle. And in the course of it, because of a MacGuffin, Esri, the lieutenant, sacrifices herself to save the ship and destroy the other ship. And of course John is distraught, but they're safe. And then Locke's like, okay, this is like, we're talking this much of the book left. They're like 100 pages left of this 760 page book. At this point Locke's like, all right, we're going to wrap up the Sunspire scheme, deal with the Archon, deal with the pirates. We're going to deal with everything within the next 100 pages. And you're like, how are they going to wrap this whole thing up? That's what I felt at this point, is like, they build up this Sunspire scheme so much, and then they go off and be pirates for a very, very long time. And it was at the point where I'm like, is the third book sort of a wrap-up of the Sinspire? I keep calling it Sunspire, which I think is something totally different. The Sinspire scheme. And I was like, how is it going to wrap up in the last tiny few amount of pages? But it does, in a way. So he goes to the Sinspire. He goes to the he introduces a third faction. He goes to the council that we've heard about, but haven't talked about. Turns out the council had been hired by the Bondsmagi to try and assassinate John and Locke, which they had been attacked by assassins throughout this whole book, every time they step foot on this land. But they convinced the council to stop doing this and also to help them get rid of the Archon, because it's in the council's benefit. So the plan is thus, they go to the Archon, say, hey, send a whole bunch of your elite guard out to arrest us while we're at the Sin Spire. We will rob the Sin Spire. Then your guard will arrest us, take us safely back into your custody. Then we'll go off and burn down the harbor and give you the reason, the excuse for you to get more prestige and power in this society. But they're going to swap out the elite guards of the Archon with those of the Council, and then assassinate the Archon, still have their loot, and get out of Dodge. And that's what happens. And like, this is when I started to, like, it was really fun, really interesting read, but this was when I was starting to be like, okay, there's so many coincidences and little things that the writer wrote in that could have gone so wrong and weren't part of the plan. Like, when they go to the Sin Spire, they get patted down and all their weapons and equipment get taken away. But Locke, one of the guards specifically says, hey, this guy's a pack of cards on him. And the woman says, oh, of course he does. Just let him have it. What could possibly go wrong with a deck of cards? Turns out that deck of cards is integral to this whole plan. And if they had just confiscated the deck of cards, he's going into a casino. They have good reason to. None of this would have happened. Anyway, so that's one thing. So then they go up to the top of the tower. He says to Requin, hey, the Archon, he's on to me. He's sending a whole bunch of guys after me. Quick, you need to go stop them. And so they all leave, and then John and Locke break apart the chairs that are up there, and inside the chairs are all of their equipment. So they get all their equipment. They rob all the paintings that are in this place, which are worth like a lot. They rob these paintings, they scale down the side of the tower, and then they escape safely into the custody of the Archon's men, who then get ambushed and replaced with the Council's men. So then the Council's men, disguised as the Archon's men, go to the Archon, and then the Archon says, ho ho ho, I'm done dealing with you. I'm going to kill you, John and Locke, but I brought my alchemist that has the antidote to the poison with you just so you can see that he's here. Like, why would he bring this guy? He literally says, just so you can see him before you die, knowing you'll never get the antidote. Like, that was just dumb. And if the alchemist hadn't been there, this whole plan would have been pointless. So then the disguised guards attack the Archon. They tie up the Archon, take him back to the pirate ship where he lives in the hold of the pirate ship forever. So the pirates are happy now. Of course, the alchemist's like, I only have one cure for the poison, and you can't dilute it or split it in half or it won't work. But I still have the recipe for it in my brain, and then he gets killed in the fight. So then they escape. They take their paintings with them. So they get the paintings, they get the Archons, the pirates are happy. They only get one cure, which is not great because both John and Locke are poisoned. And then they sort of escape scot-free. They go to sell the paintings in another city, and it turns out they were just fake reproductions, and the Requin, he kept the real paintings in the vault this whole time. So they didn't actually gain a fortune, they just sort of broke even. Oh darn, guess we'll have to have another adventure. And then Locke and John sit down to have a dinner and debate over who gets the cure. And of course, Locke slips it into John's drink, so John gets cured without him knowing. And then Locke's like, we'll figure it out, and that's how it ends. But like I said, there was one major inconsistency, is that for whatever reason, Locke, when he went to Requin, his plan was like, look, we gotta kill John. I hate this John guy, my partner. We gotta kill him. We gotta get rid of him. But then, at two separate times, when Locke goes back to the Sin Spire to see Requin, he brings John with him, and they don't question like, wait, how does your partner know about this scheme that you're trying to pull with me? Like he does. They tell John, oh, John can wait outside. Locke, come with us. But like, they should be like, what is your explanation for taking John? Like, he's not supposed to know about this. This is all a plan between me and him, and he has not. It's just like a huge oversight in the writing. Like, I don't want to use the word sloppy, but it was sort of really fun, really well written, but not as well as the first one. Like, we have the case of a super genius thief mastermind who can figure everything out, but a lot of what he just figures out in plans, his plans don't go ahead because he's smart. They go ahead because the writer wrote the situation so that it all works out for him. Which I guess you could say makes him really lucky, but I don't know. That was sort of the vibes I got by the end of it. It was still really cool, but again, structurally, like the first half is all this Sinspire scheme, and then the second half's all pirates, and then it all wraps up in like a very short time. And it turns out that they weren't trying to break into the vault of the casino anyways, and they just wanted these paintings, and I don't know. Still a really good book. I'm just going to criticize it because, you know, I can. I don't want to just be like, wow, what a fun book. But that was Red Seas Under Red Skies. Will I get to the third book in this series? Who knows? I can't believe this one, the second book, came out in 2007. Like, I think, oh, this is like modern new fantasy. It's 17 years old. Anyways, so that was Red Seas Under Red Skies.